Welcome, welcome, welcome everybody to another edition of Hot Program. I am your host with the most, all the way from the East Coast, and as always, good people, I am in airplane mode. And now a man who said don't worry about the introduction today, a man who needs no introduction. How you doing today, my one black friend?
I'm okay, Pocket Locker. How are you doing? How are you feeling?
I'm doing all right. I'm feeling okay. So I need to just roll with it. Feel okay. Just go with it. So today is an interesting episode because we're going to be talking about 10 secrets pastors don't want you to know about church. And it is a video by Durante Lamar. I'm a big fan of Durante Lamar. He's one of our hosts over on Black Free Thinkers. He's been crazy busy for a while. But definitely, if you're not subscribed, please subscribe to the Skeptic Haven Network, and you'll see Black Free Thinkers every other Monday. We have an episode tomorrow night. I'm not sure if Durante will be with us or not, but it's definitely another place to catch him. I think he's also, just had an episode on Mythvision podcast, so make sure you subscribe to Derek Lambert over at Mythvision podcast, because I think he just had a show with Durante. And Durante's also been on The Line recently, Jimmy Snow's network, where Stephanie Helms is a host. I think he's been on there primarily with Matt Dillahunty. I've seen him on there. But yeah, Durante's making moves and, does this very seriously. So definitely want to check him out. But I want to respond to this, because Durante's a friend, also a Black non-believer. So it's cool to kind of have a Black pastor's perspective on 10 secrets the church doesn't want you to know.
Wow.
Yeah, and then also I think to mix it kind of with my experience being the, I guess, grandson of a pastor, but sort of growing up in a family of Black ministers. So what that feels like when you're not the pastor, but in family with pastors generationally. And then also, obviously, I worked in ministry myself full time. I've worked as a worship musician most of my life, but I also worked full time on staff at a church as a youth leader. And so, I'm someone who also had the responsibility of sharing the gospel and leading ministry and all of that. So we'll see where it takes us. And then, of course, you've got your expertise and years of experience. I think this will be a very interesting episode.
I think so too. I am a former Sunday school teacher, probably led just a handful of Bible studies though. And my father, before I was born, had been a minister in the Baha'i faith. And I didn't know that until his funeral, when a guy came up to me after the eulogy I gave and called my dad Reverend. I'm like, I don't know what you mean. And he broke it down for me. And my brother dug into it. And holy crap, my father was like this big, important, super respected guy within the Baha'i faith. I had no idea.
Wow, you didn't know. Wow.
He would occasionally mention something about the Baha'i, but I mean very rarely. Like maybe once every 3 years, Baha'i something. And so that I found extremely interesting. But they said, we have all these pictures, we have all this information about your dad. And we're like, what? So my old man friend might have been some sort of religious secret agent or something like that. I don't know.
That's always so interesting to me too. Like when people are sort of under wraps about their status in the church, you always wonder, why that is. And of course, I guess we'll never know.
He's gone. I'll never know.
But yeah, quick shout out to Sarah's in the chat and Nasiket. I don't know if I hope I'm pronouncing that right. And Sarah Revolve Volk. Wait, Zaravok. Can you pronounce that? Zaravok.
I have no idea.
Look, we happy you here.
Yes, thank you.
X. X is good to see you. Oh, yeah. Sorry, I'm terrible with names. All right, let's go ahead and jump into this this video. What, that was not the right setup. There we go.
Christians, if your pastors were completely honest with you about how church works, you'd probably walk away. And that's exactly why they're not telling you the full truth. Pastors are trained not just in theology, but also in how to sell their church. It's a business, and that's not even the worst part. It's a system designed to keep people in line, keep the money flowing in, and to keep you from questioning too much. And I know this because I used to be one of them. I stood on the platform week over week believing that I was doing the work of God. But looking back, I realized how much I kept hidden, sometimes because I was trained to, and sometimes because I didn't even recognize the problems myself. Now, here's the irony. When I was ordained, I actually believed that we were about to fix the world, like we were Batman swooping in to save Gotham. But in reality, it turns out we were more like the Kardashians, busy brand building, thriving on drama, and selling illusions for ratings. So today...
Hang on, I'm trying to get through the man's intro. But he's just throwing so many haymakers every second. He's just throwing so many haymakers. Wow.
This is astonishing to me when he said they were like the Kardashians. By the way, sharp-eyed audience members may have seen me in an episode of the Kardashians.
Oh, really? Is that one of the gigs you landed?
No. They came to a restaurant, and I went to the restaurant with my then boss, and their film crew was in front of us filming them. I didn't know who these people were.
Oh.
And although one of them, what's the rich one? She's like a billionaire. Well, they're all rich.
I think all of them are rich. I don't know.
Her phone number is like one number off of my phone number. So I've never tried to reach out to her. I have nothing to say to her.
Sure.
Hello. But anyway, they were in front of us, and so we're in the background. There's like that sign, like you could appear on camera in a show.
Yeah.
By being here is just giving your consent.
Yeah.
So I may be on an episode of the Kardashians, but like an early one, like a super early one. So anyway, I find it very, very impressive that he makes that admission that in retrospect to him, it was that sensationalized what they were doing. I remember after getting baptized, the way it felt, it did feel like, yeah, we're going to save the world. And I've even heard like Scientologists be so happy to be Scientologists. Yeah, we're going to clear the planet. That enthusiasm is real for so many people, you know, and to have that genuine attitude turn into one to where it's like, holy crap, this is not what I wanted. It's self-preservation. I got to keep the illusion going to keep the money coming in. Wow, I just wonder how common that is with one of my Facebook interlocutors. I have a feeling that's where he's at. He's put himself out there as, you know, John Q Christian, and now everybody expects we want to see 25 posts. They don't, but he's putting up like 20 plus posts a day that are of a religious nature. Now, I don't know that anybody other than maybe his wife reads them all. Maybe there are tens of thousands of people who do. I don't expect that. But the idea, like, this is publicly facing, this is who I am. And I just find it astonishing that he can make that admission, but this is what he does now. He's
But
just
yeah,
leveling with us.
no, it's congratulations to him, and again, it's something I can absolutely relate to. I can absolutely relate to, because that's what I felt like in ministry myself. And when I went through the process, you know, it felt like oh, what is up, Beck? It felt so heavy because you mentioned it, the public facing thing, the idea that this is something I've made myself known for. I'm the church man. You know, I've literally thought back. You just made me realize that, and you know, shout out to Lamar again, but like, that's who I was to people. When they saw me, they saw the church, because that was who I was in the community. I was the guy that worked at the church and helped your kids, you know, and then that part of it too, where we were, you know, it's kind of like I justify a lot of things I put up with as an educator. There was a certain way in which I really was a community organizer. And I remember talking to a woman from Mexico who also worked for a nonprofit, and just me and her were out for burgers or whatever, used to kick it, and sort of reflecting on, you know, there's very few people in our whole city that can say, you know, their job provides for them to advocate for others or be a community organizer. Like, it's a tough gig to find. Especially because this was the Obama era, so being a community organizer was hot, right? Because that was the president's background, right?
Well, I think we could add to that awesome feeling that that's what people know you for being a faithful person that's doing something either for their church or the community at large. You're that person. So Jesus would be very proud of you, right? You know, people that aren't putting in the work you're putting in,
right?
So right. Like we talked about it before, like the dance team who put in all that work, all those hours, and then people are insulting them. Other Christians are insulting them because they don't appreciate the sacrifices that those people have made, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, it feels good if you have or haven't done it. You should know that it feels good to be that person.
And let's be honest, there's status that comes with it. You know, literally, y'all, like, you know, the relationship I had even with the school that we served, that a lot of our children came from, you know, I was put in charge of the organizing the PTO. Really, you know, probably something I felt I could do, but you know, why people believe that I could do that or should be responsible for that is crazy to me looking back on it. But it was literally just because we were the church people and we were helping those kids, and they knew we loved those kids, and so they if they needed something for them, they turned to us. And like the relationship I had with the principal of that school, y'all, asked me if he should retire. Think about that. Like, that's crazy. Like, why he trusted me that much that he thought that I was a person he could turn to ask that. You were welcome in anybody's home, and you could. There was nowhere that if people knew who you were, you didn't feel safe. So literally, you could walk into the projects in the middle of the night, middle of the morning, whatever it was, and people are like, oh, that's church man, whatever. Like, you know, like, it's just. So I'm just saying, like, a lot of that is a real thing. With that, it sort of changes how you see yourself and how people see you, and it's a rough thing to leave that behind.
Right. Now, if I may, the only place where all of this falls down is when you're subject to the members of the parking ministry. As a former member of the parking ministry, we didn't really care who you were. There are like 7 people we had to care about that they got good parking. The rest of you got to go to the lower lot and take the shuttle.
Yeah,
we're full up here.
So but by that say, so you didn't get all the privileges and perks and bennies, but at the same time, you definitely understood who did.
Who did? Yes. Well,
like you said, these 7 people or whoever. Yeah.
We had a bit of an understanding in the parking ministry because we saw people in wheelchairs, people with walkers, and people on crutches. So I think almost all of us would park down at the lower parking garage, which is like a quarter mile away from the church, and take the shuttle, because we saw the need. So there's no ego there. We don't walk into the church and go to a service. We go report to who's ever leading the parking ministry that day, get our vest and our little, whatever else they give us to guide people to their places. And we'd be told, yeah, there's, I'll give you an example. I'll name a name. Meg Ryan is coming today. Make sure there's a space
so they got to
Ryan.
get a good spot. Okay. Yeah.
Of course.
Yeah.
Because, and this will tie into what Devontae's saying. So if Meg Ryan, who's, Durante, thank you. Meg Ryan, who's a wealthy lady, with a lot of people who want to see Meg Ryan, right? She's got a cachet to her name.
Right.
If she becomes a regular there, it'll draw more people there. If let's say she doesn't tithe, but she gives something, she's probably given $1,000 a week or whatever, right? So you want that income. So by all means, pull out all the stops for Meg Ryan when she comes. And that church had a lot of celebrities coming there, a lot, and some on a regular basis. Like I'd see them every week. I usually just leave them alone
because their endorsement is huge, but
yes, it is.
But you could play the long game in terms of trying to get them to tithe, because even just one or two of them tithing is a game changer for the church's income.
Well, all you have to do is invite them to dinner and put them in your inner circle. Ask them their opinion. Wow, my opinion mattered to that guy who's up there in front of like 8,000 people every week. Yeah, every weekend.
Yeah, plus once they trust you to train them up spiritually, that's a natural thing for you to say, well, hey, for those of us that really want to walk that walk, you got to put your money where your heart is, so to speak.
That's right.
It's an easy position. It's easier once you have that leverage in their life.
Your spiritual freedom is not free. The collection baskets are being passed around. If you
exactly,
if you're able to make a donation, no matter how great or small, it is appreciated for the nourishment and flourishment of the ministry. See, I'm ready to go up on stage, right?
Yeah. All right, let's try to get into these secrets, man. I'm excited about this list. We haven't done a list video in a while, I don't think. Or maybe most of them are list videos. I don't know. I guess last week's was kind of a list video.
Down the top 10 things pastors don't want you to know about church. And trust me, if churchgoers knew these things,
he teasing
a whole
me.
lot more pews would be empty. Let's get started. So number 10, church is a business, not a ministry. Churches love to brand themselves as spiritual homes, places of worship where the focus is on faith, community, worship, and prayer. But behind the scenes, churches are structured more like businesses than sanctuaries. They rely on a steady stream of revenue, they market themselves, and they have clear financial incentives to grow their congregations. The moment money is involved, it stops being a simple place of worship and starts functioning like a corporation with tax exemptions. Pastors may not call themselves CEOs, but they manage their churches like CEOs, overseeing budgets, payroll, building expansions, and even marketing strategies to draw in new members. This isn't to say that every church is a money-hungry empire, but the reality is, without money, churches cannot operate. And that financial dependence shapes every decision they make, from the messages they preach to the programs they fund. Ever notice how the humble pastor's face is plastered on billboards, newsletters, and social media ads? They make Apple's marketing team look reserved. Turns out, if you can't hook new fish, the donation pond goes dry real quick. Let's look at number 9. You're tired.
Okay, he's coming out the gate swinging. This really does remind me of boxing, and there's a difference as boxing fans. Like there's a lot of reason for boxers to be hesitant, right? Because the other guy's dangerous and do a lot of range finding and kind of dancing around, trying to find space and angles and stuff like that. But there's a level at which, at fans, we just want you to throw punches. We just really want you to let your hands go and just try to hit the other dude, you know. And I feel like when I watch Durante, like he throws punches. He's not gonna waste a lot of time. But yeah, this one is huge, and I'm gonna say something for me. If you're really, to me, an honest observation of American Christianity is it has been increasingly entrepreneurial over the course of my life, such that when I look back, even growing up, like even our pastor, like of the church we attended regularly growing up, like he ended up going to jail actually, and we could tell. Wow. The whole time that he was just trying to emulate a super ministry. Him and a lot of people in that church were from New York. So there was a big church in New York called Brooklyn Tabernacle, making a lot of money, you know, lots and lots of attendees and a really big kind of presence in the music industry and things like that. And, you know, and then they had the whole Empire to School and all of this. And so he was very clearly to the point of like naming our church Shawnee Tabernacle, just trying to like copy that model. And it didn't really set well with a lot of us sort of founding families and members of that church, because what drew us to the church was the fact that it was just a church in a barn, and it was super low key and super small, and it felt like authentic because it wasn't like this big corporate, well-developed thing. You see what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. So there was always literally a tension between what the pastor feels like we all need to do, and the rest of us kind of being like, but we good. Like we don't really need all of that. And you know, ultimately is why we left the church. But as it's gone more and more, because I feel like back then it was about ministers and the ministers themselves trying to be super entrepreneurial. But now it's like, I feel like most, especially evangelical Christian churches, they're corporate even more so than they're denominational. Like asking a lot of these churches what denomination you belong to is like a weird question. And a lot of times they won't even have an answer. Right, because non-denominational is not the correct answer for any of them, because actually non-denominational is more or less a specific denomination and type of worship style. So people don't want to say that, but then they're like technically not really affiliated formally with a lot of denomination, although they might recognize, for instance, a lot of them recognize that somewhere, if you took their history back enough, it's going to be Baptist-ish or some kind of flavor or whatever. But really, the more pertinent question to ask them these days is, what organization are you a part of? And that's what you're literally referring to, is like, what corporate thing is this? Because a lot of them now, they're basically franchises. They're just, and I played for a church like this. For instance, this church that I was playing was called the Salt Company, and the Commons Church. And what they did was they just went around, they were like corporate church plants, and they wanted people to like uproot their whole lives and be dedicated to the idea of planting a church. And then they would deliberately plant local community churches right near college campuses, because that was their thing to like win the next generation, was to focus on college campuses, right? So that's how you end up playing that drums for them, because they're a ministry that's around on campus. Great people, like the most charismatic people you can want to meet, that, you know, charm you out of your time very easily, because you just feel like you just want to be around these people. But you realize that it's very deliberate, it's very strategic, and that there's a corporation, and that these are basically franchises, and it's a very deep structure, and it's in many ways the religion has become more corporate than it is denominational, and that's like a pretty profound shift for me. Yeah, do you have other thoughts before we let him hit us with number 9?
I've recounted going to the Potter's house in Texas with my sister. That's T.D. Jakes' church. I think he retired. I don't know if he's still involved in any way other than maybe supervisory roles. I think she said at that time there were 28,000 people that go there on a regular basis. Well, I'm an assistant accountant at the time, so my brain says, do the math. And I start doing the math.
Oh,
Okay,
right.
let's see
Yeah.
what your average tithe is. What's the mortgage, estimated mortgage, power, utilities, blah, 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 blah. And I'm going through it. I'm like, he's got to be raking in $2 million a week.
Yeah, it's crazy. It's crazy. And then a
2
lot of
million
times, even like the mansions they live in and a lot of their expenses, they put all that on the church. And so, you know, they're raking in a lot of money, but they're not really paying their mortgage.
Yeah,
they're not
paying.
really paying for the luxury car they drive. They're not really paying for their jet. Their congregants are actually paying for all of that.
The luxury car thing has amazed me, because I think one particular minister I'm thinking of, he drove like the probably the fanciest Lexus car sedan that they sold. And I'm thinking, that's a little too much. That's a little too much. I understand you might want to take, and I've seen this because my nephew's grandfather's a minister. He ministered the church that was across the street from the projects where we lived. And he always seemed to have some sort of nice Lincoln, but he worked at a freaking steel mill. That was a steel mill. That was his day job. And so his whole lifestyle could be afforded by his job at the mill, you know.
Right.
And I have a feeling that the church was something like my uncle. The church is something my uncle feels like he needs to do. He needs to run a church. But my uncle's not making money off those people in that church. He loves them, and that's why he's there. And they love him, and they love God, and that's why they're there, you know. But to see the Potter's house, it felt industrial. It did not feel spiritual to me. Yes, I was an atheist at the time, but it felt industrial. And when I look at Joel Osteen's Empire, it's the same thing. It feels industrial to me. This definitely is a show. This is a business. If you look at it any other way, you are freaking crazy. And I've said it for years. If I ever got elected, I would want to tax churches not on donations that people give them, because I feel that would be wrong. They're donating money. They already get a tax break on that. I would want to tax the bookstore, the coffee shop, the car washes, stuff like that. Like, no, this is income.
Oh, you're so nice. I'm taxing every single dollar. Oh my goodness. I'm charging them taxes on their plans. What did you say you're gonna do? You're gonna build the what? Yeah, I'm not even you're paying taxes on it right now. But we didn't even build it. Yeah, I don't even care. Yeah, I don't even care. You're paying taxes on any, if you imagine it, you're paying taxes on it.
That's far from being fair.
When you see how many hospitals I build and how I improve these schools, they're gonna get over it.
Maybe they would, Pocket Locker. Of course, this is another one of those times where I think my way is better. But you're entitled to your own opinion about that sort of thing. But yeah, I just think a lot of times what we see in churches is a business. When I look at the Catholic churches, well, it's not as if they do no good. They do some good. That's like a fact. I think probably most churches will do some good in their community, as far as building and supporting people in the community, helping them pay their bills if they need that, feeding people. You know, food banks are such an amazing thing. So, you know, for that reason, the philanthropy, that's why I'm like, I don't really want to tax your donations because they probably go somewhere. But I'm not giving your minister a tax break that non-ministers don't get. He can't have any, he or she, they're not getting any special discounts because of they're running the church. I don't want to give them extra for that.
I feel that. So you made me think of something too with the ministry thing. with the guy. So I want to break down the justification that I understood from dealing with my grandfather. And there were certain times it was very interesting, particularly after the death of the pastor that he had been the assistant pastor under for most of my life. When he actually transitioned to pastor, there was certain things that he had to have, and we had to get him. And you understand it as it's very weird because my grandfather is seen as a very humble man who, you know, they have to be of two things. They have to have this character where they're not concerned about material things, and it's not about that, and you know, the whole deal, right? But at the same time, they have to have the nice things. And so they always, you know, drove a Mercedes, and then after they kind of switched it up, my grandfather he had a Lincoln truck. He always wanted a Lincoln, so he finally got himself a Lincoln, and he had a really nice, like, champagne colored Cadillac with like purple leather interior. We used to call it the panty dropper. Me and my uncle. Nah, that car was magic. But looking back on it, it's very weird because, again, you know, he comes off as like a very like humble pastor, not into that. So here's the justification, y'all. The justification was basically there was a certain level of aesthetic that was expected, for instance, of pastors and first ladies and stuff like that. And it was a poor reflection on your ministry if you went to the conference for whatever, or even just a fellowship service with another church, and all the ministers have really nice cars and really nice suits, and you pull up in a beater, you know, with a clearance special on. You know what I'm saying? Like, that's
3 hubcaps.
Yeah, like that's not right. Yeah, like that was a poor thing. So it was like a wink, wink, nudge, nudge. It's not that we want to drive the nicest cars. It's that we have to live up to the social obligation that really says we should probably pull up in a really, really nice car and really, really nice clothes. But so I know, but how interesting is that you buy it. And you buy it. Even when when he became pastor, we had to get him like a gold cross or something, because a lot of them wore like a big chain with like a gold cross, and it was like we had to get him because he can't how's he gonna be the pastor and I be the only pastor rolling around without the big gold cross chain on? Like, so we gotta pony up and get him this chain so that he's looking right.
If you type that into AI, what would it generate? Typical 1980s black pastor. What would it show you? I have AI on my phone. Let's see.
GitHub used to work. I don't know what's going on with that command. That's interesting. You got to put a person, I think. Go ahead.
I just find it very strange that, and this is the first I'm hearing of it, that there is a bit of expectation. I do want to call it peer pressure, but
absolutely peer pressure.
Is that the right word? At that level, I would think they wouldn't be the least bit interested in that. I think if Jesus was actually real, and if he had been real, that's nothing he would have cared about. But when you learn about the garment he was buried in, how it was one piece woven from top to bottom, that sounds like it might have been expensive, but people were probably giving him things. Because there were women that supported his ministry, probably men too.
And my goodness, you should see the robes. I was just thinking about the robes. People used to hand make them robes, and the robes were like, wow. They were pretty incredible. I used to love that. Matter of fact, that was one of my favorite things. And okay, here's another thing, right? So I'm gonna just admit this. Like, when I was a kid, one of my favorite things was to go into a pastor's office and look at his collection of robes. because it was usually quite extensive and the robes would be really nice. And to be honest, that's how most of them rolled. Like you could just open the closet in their office, which is a privilege, right? Because I can only do that because I'm the grandson of the assistant pastor and then the pastor, whatever, right? But when you then go to other churches, you're in ministry and stuff, you can kick it in the pastor's office and you can see their robes, and it's pretty cool. But now I'm realizing I'm feeding into that expectation, right? Like that becomes part of their reputation, is like, you don't want to be that pastor that's only got like a robe or two. Like that's crazy. Sunday's the day to show out, and pastor wants to have like all the different colors because all the different colors mean different things. And then you're gonna have the red and white, but then you gotta have the white with the red.
Mixing it up a little.
Oh my goodness, y'all. All right, let's keep rolling.
Tithes don't go where you think they do. Pastors love to emphasize the importance of tithing, claiming it's a direct act of faith and that the money is used to support the church's mission. But let's be real. Most of your tithe goes towards salaries, maintenance, and operating costs. While some churches do charitable work, the bulk of their funds are spent keeping the organization afloat, covering things like staff salaries, including the pastor's paycheck, which can sometimes
that's nice, MyOneBlack Friend. Let's put this over. Wait, go put it back.
I could text you. I had to tell it to make him wear a gold chain. It didn't want to do that on its own.
Oh, really?
Yeah. And I honestly thought this guy would be fatter, but in my experience, they tend to run in larger sizes, the 1980s black pastor. But
yeah, no, that's not the look. That's not the look, man. The look is like the robe you see when they be in the movies. That's that type of robe. Because back then, too, like back in the day, that was back when the choirs wore robes.
Yes.
Y'all, I'm a sucker for the robe game. I'm going to just tell you right now. They got me with that one. They got me with the robes, y'all. I ain't even going to hold
significant, but also mortgage or rent for the church building, utilities, maintenance, renovations, and, of course, marketing campaigns to attract new members. Meanwhile, very little actually makes its way to the poor and needy. Churches that push tithing the hardest tend to be the ones most focused on sustaining their own institution, not on helping their communities. It's like donating to a charity that promises to save endangered pandas, but 90% of the funds go to panda costumes for the staff and building plush office spaces. Then they hand out 3 granola bars to a homeless guy, snap a picture, and call it outreach. Number 8.
Okay. This is something that actually is on my mind a lot, especially when we're thinking about money. And it's a big part of, to me, the justification of why we do need to tax the churches, and why I think it's a real misfortune in our country that so many people who are, communities of faithful, like in their head, I think a lot of their charitable financial effort, I think, goes to the church. And this is why I don't consider that to be actual charitable work, because that is not the church's primary, that's not what they're doing with the money. It's kind of like the creationist organizations that claim to be doing, scientific research, but none of the money that they actually spend goes towards scientific research, like actually none of it. So it's just a misfortune. And I think he articulated it so well. And it just got me genuinely excited to hear somebody else say that. And I could blame him. Hey, Durante said it.
Yeah, put it on him, not on
you. Yeah, exactly.
Wasn't anything I said.
It's not me who thinks none of the money you spend on your tithes. You know what I mean? And it's not, and that's the thing that I think people just need to think about, because I do think for a lot of believers, what gets them is the soup kitchen, the well, what else is there, y'all? The book bag drive and the school supplies, the toy drive, the food drive, the sweaters, the food drive. Yeah, like And those are solid efforts, but you know, that's what they do with the little throwaway money for show. You know what I mean? Like that's not their primary thing. That's not what they do. And to me, that's why I think if it comes to really community building from a financial perspective, I think people are better off donating to actual nonprofits and community organizations who, yes, are going to also have some overhead. Like they're going to have to, you know, have a place to operate and pay salaries and buy computers and whatever else. But you're going to see that there's very strict regulations that anything above and beyond that, they're going to have to actually be turning into service directly. And churches run for profit, essentially. And I think it's just kind of interesting that we continue to treat them like nonprofits when they're clearly not.
Well, they run for a profit because there might be bad times, right?
Yeah, I mean, and I thought about that as soon as I said it too, right? I think there's a lot of churches that, you know, they're not operating. And the funny thing is, even like you were talking about your family, like my family is the same way, to like where most of the things that my grandfather had or got, like either he could pay for them from their job or you know, it was taken care of by family. Because, you know, they weren't making money from their church. So, you know, this is no shade to those type of ministries. It's mostly for the ones that are somehow producing these, you know, multimillionaires and sometimes billionaires. And
Kenneth Copeland
crazy.
and stuff like that, guys like that.
All right, let's you ready to go?
Yeah, let's
okay.
Rock on.
Pastors doubt but can't admit it. Believe it or not, many pastors experience doubt about their faith, but they can't afford to be honest about it. If a pastor publicly questions God's existence, the Bible's reliability, or key theological concepts, they risk losing their influence, their job, their congregation, and even their reputation. So instead, they bury their doubts and continue preaching, even if deep down they no longer believe what they're saying. This creates a culture of performance rather than genuine belief, where pastors feel trapped in their roles, unable to leave even if they no longer believe. They might spend years secretly questioning their faith, all while standing in front of a congregation preaching certainty. I can remember late night Google binges myself about fossil evidence and contradictions in scripture, and then waking up Sunday morning to deliver a message on unwavering faith. Talk about living a double life. Number 7, church.
All right, that's a crazy one. I think it's definitely really true. I think that's a tough one. I think most believers doubt. What is you AI generating these?
Yes, but see, I switched to 1960s black pastor from 1980s black pastor. And AI seems to have like models of people because it's like the same guy,
I think it does,
in different dress. I'm like, oh, this isn't very inventive. But anyway, I like the fact that you are we're talking about this particular point. It is astonishing to me how believers will hold on to their faith when we start springing on them some of the uncomfortable things in the Bible, like slavery. The response immediately is, no, it was different back then, or you're talking about a different indentured servitude. Like, no, specifically slavery. And then you clarify and you can offer them a scripture, and yet there's nothing in them. For many, nothing changes about their position to capture a human being and control their life from cradle to grave.
Wow. Yeah.
That doesn't shake their faith. That'll, for me, again, there's plenty of stuff in the Bible. I was like, oh, hell no.
No.
And and again, I have this little Post-it note on my computer over there. My perspective on the Bible may be different than yours because I read it.
Right.
You know, I find it shocking that a minister that survived seminary, and I don't know that all ministers go to seminary. I'm assuming they don't. I'm
No.
assuming you can be ordained just for being very involved, very
Yeah.
dedicated,
Yeah.
and wanting that, right?
Yeah.
No anointing necessary. Apply now. I find it astonishing that some of them can go on after a seminary education and still be a priest, be a clergyman, or clergy person. I find it astonishing. Like, but wait, you know the uncomfortable truth of this. Why? I wish I could talk to Bishop John Shelby Spong and ask him, if knowing what you know, why do you remain in the faith? Why? And for him, I can see it being, because I've listened to I don't know, probably 300 hours of audio from him. It's likely because of his reach, and he felt he couldn't abandon people. And I think he probably felt that early on. I can't abandon people. Or knowing what I know, there's a special way that all of this needs to be taught. There's a special way all of this needs to be presented to people, and their questions not ignored, but their questions honestly answered with integrity.
Yeah, you know what? That was my deal. So I had a few things that I got really lucky. One is I actually worked when I was working at a church. I worked for a pastor who was like encouraging about doubt in a weird way. Like he kind of just saw it as part of a sin struggle, but it still kind of normalized it in a way. And as somebody who, they didn't really get into this type of thing in Catholic school, obviously, and the way my family, I thought, practiced Christianity, like that was crazy, like you know what I mean. So that was kind of a big deal. And then for some reason I really got into this idea of like being a devil's advocate. I think because I really liked that fucking movie, to be honest. And at the time, I really wanted to be a lawyer and be a prosecutor on the way to whatever else I was going to do. And I just saw it as there shouldn't be anything wrong with doubting or asking questions or looking into these things at the time, because I knew it was fine. Like it was like, like it'll be whatever, but it can't hurt, it can't be wrong. And so it gave me a lot of permissiveness in a way that it wasn't necessarily that I was doubting, although I think it maybe was, and it was just my way of rationalizing my doubt, but it felt like I was going to where the doubt was, because I couldn't understand why not. I thought it would make me a better defender of the faith to genuinely understand the critiques, to understand what people were saying. And I thought that was sort of a special gift. It's a special kind of belief, to be so secure that you could say, well, what seems to be the problem? But looking back, I think that was definitely a lot of what, led me to seek information that would ultimately change my perspective on a lot of things. But I don't know. I don't know how to get people there. That's the.
Well, I think we can ask people to go to places they don't want to go, just like when people challenge our non-belief, which I think we all can agree, as non-believers, we're still flexible. We just need really good evidence.
Yeah.
You saying so, your claim isn't proof.
Yeah.
You know, I've been told by several people, oh, watch these military videos from these fighter jets. They have captured alien craft and stuff like that. And like, yeah. And it's, you learn later under analysis, it's birds or it's meteors or something like that. Well, I've seen a lot of that. So I'm reluctant to believe that it's aliens in their craft come to Earth to watch us, to observe us. Could it happen? Why, certainly. Has it happened in modern times? I seriously doubt it. But the universe is a remarkable place. It manages to still impress me, if I may say that, with some of the images I see. But the evidence that we require, they often don't have. They don't have something that's convicting, like, okay, I've just read you the story of Jesus, the stories of Jesus going to the cross, suffering and dying for your sins, so that you can be redeemed from the fiery pit of hell. Are you on board? I see tears in your eyes. You're clearly moved. Can we get you into some Bible studies and so on and so on and so on, and train you up to be a really amazing Christian? There are a lot of people who are going to say yes, but there'd be people who would say, I need a little bit more information. This Mark 16 through 19. Which one of you has power to lay hands on people and heal them?
It's really crazy, because part of my thing is that's why it's so important that you get them as children. And I think that's one of the huge,
while they're young.
Yeah, I think that's one of the huge fights of the faithful, is because because for me, one of the things I would think would be really healthy to normalize is a distaste for teaching these things to children. But I'm so on the losing side of the consensus on that, because I think that'd be the end of it. I think if you were able to develop what Uncle Bobby would call your intellectual self-defenses before being exposed to this stuff, I think it'd be pretty hard for you to get into it.
Can I address a comment? Zerovoke?
Sure.
Zerovoke? Okay, so thank you for putting it on the screen. When I was a child in church, I felt like I was the only one who was questioning the stuff being said. It made me feel like nobody cared if it was actually real or not. Thank you.
Yeah.
September 11th, when the Twin Towers were attacked, it was my night at church in Los Angeles to give my testimony. Right? What's my origin story for Christianity? Why am I a Bible-believing Christian? I said to the leader of the church that day, I said, I don't think what I have to say is important right now in light of events from earlier today. The reply I received was, well, if you don't want to testify, we'll just go on. And I was like, in my brain, motherfucker, are you serious? Did you see the video? People jumping out of the burning buildings and planes hitting it, like, all this death, the towers collapsing. Did you see that? You want me to tell people I love Jesus? Right? Are they so secure right now that that's what they need to hear? Aren't people afraid? I was. My brother, I had a brother in the military at that time who I had a conversation with him, and he gave me a bunch of insight. Like, okay, here's what you don't see that's happening. Here's everything you don't see that's happening. He goes, so worry less. But I was still worried. It was like the world was still real to me, but not to them. it was like I was seeing something they could not see and feeling things they could not feel because no one in the room was talking about it.
Yeah.
No.
I think I think it's really weird. To me, I've always thought about what does it mean to believe something? Okay, it means to think that that is true. And so somehow we get to something that is all about belief, but the practitioners seem to not be interested in determining whether or not it's actually true. And I literally just decided I'm neurodivergent. Like that's I had to just because it just there's no other there was no other way for me to reconcile it other than like okay, I guess I'm just weird, and for some reason I can't get around that basic formulation in my head. And then I just since then I've just tried to somehow wrap my head around the idea that they believe it's true by like declaration or affiliation, and but the motivation is beyond its empirical value. You know, it's not it can't be about that because there's all these other things in consideration.
Well, I my point of view is that faith is a delicate thing. And that is why people get so guarded about it, because what we see in this world, we often see pain, we see lack, we see limitation, and we may feel those things within ourselves to a greater or lesser degree. So it really matters that there's a God up there, that there's a Jesus, a God of some kind, not necessarily just Jesus, because there are other faiths. So that really matters because we want the next life to far exceed this one. And so it has a value that next life that can't be tarnished by anything that occurs in this life, right? We must hold on at all costs because this life is not permanent. The next one is. So being able to stop one's ears and simply say, well, that's not my truth. And end the conversation with that. If you ever change your mind, I'm here for you. Well, the same is true. If you ever change your mind, you can actually read the Bible back to front, and then you'll know what I know. You'll know some of what I know. There's a lot of history they still won't be in touch with, but you'll know some of what I know. Sure. But it does bring them the peace. I don't want to say the peace that surpasses understanding. I think scientists understand it very well. A lot of people understand it very well. Some folks won't deal with their problems the way a person without a religious discipline does. They de-stress by letting Jesus fix it, or letting God fix it, or whoever their God is. Right. That, this is something that Brahma will take care of. I don't have to worry about it. Yeah. Okay. Well, that right there, as a person with a heart condition who's supposed to limit the amount of stress they have in their life, if that's how you get down, you go for it because it's going to help you. That is a legitimate survival technique. It's not the one for me, but it's a legitimate technique. So I want reality, which sucks sometimes. As I work on my truck, I'm doing things I've never done before. A simple thing might take me much longer than an experienced mechanic. or I'm trying to put a part on that I should have put on before I put 16 other parts on, and now it's hard to get to. And I tell people I could build this truck. If it was all torn apart, I could build it in half the time it's taken me to get this far, and I'm not finished. I could finish it faster than I've done this, based on what I know now. And I think a lot of people of faith, they won't go to that level of examining what they believe to understand how it actually fits together, what every aspect of it does, what all the parts do. And had other parts gone on first, that they would have been done with it sooner. Right? Like this message today that Durante is giving. Had other people seen the business side first and gotten disgusted with it, they would have been done sooner. That's all right. I'm not. That's not for me.
Yeah.
Or my favorite, and fellow non-believers, excuse any Christian that says this. You got to give them credit when they say this. That's not the God that I believe in. Because then you truly know where that person stands. The Bible is not the authority that other Christians may hold it up to be. That person has fixed the God of the Bible. They've forgiven him for his sins and made him better in their own eyes.
Right. But still believe he's somehow perfect. That's
well, they make him
profound.
So. They make him so. Look, when you confront people with the genocides in the Bible, and you say, I'll go back to Pine Creek for a second. I know you don't necessarily want me to, but his poof or drown, is it more cruel to poof a person out of existence or use the Noah flood drowning method? Well, person after person who's not overly defending the faith will say, well, poof.
Yeah.
You didn't cause that person any suffering. Other people, well, I don't disagree with God. I think God's decision. And I'm standing there, I'm like, you know what? I've had very wealthy people ask me how they should proceed. What should we do next? How should we approach this? I don't have their level of success, right? I don't have their life experience, but I'll tell them, yeah, based on my examination of the data, here's what we should do. Based on this contract, I think you need to ask a lawyer this list of questions that I made, and then make a decision based on that. The person who's unwilling to second guess God often blows my mind, because I was someone who had to. When I saw something that didn't make sense, I wanted to know, well, if this God is omniscient, this doesn't look like high-level reasoning to me. This makes no sense. Why all the suffering? Is it just to prove that this God is mighty and can make people suffer? And how come it keeps happening? How come he keeps having to prove that? Surely people understand. Surely people don't want the suffering. But it just keeps driving it home.
Yeah. Wow. All right. I got thoughts, but I'm gonna let it go. Okay.
Despite the modern push for gender equality, church leadership remains overwhelmingly male-dominated. Many churches still refuse to allow women to serve as pastors or hold leadership positions. Even in churches that claim to be progressive, women often find themselves stuck in subordinate roles, expected to support men rather than lead alongside them. The Bible is often used as justification for this, citing verses about women being submissive or women being seen as the weaker vessel. But let's be honest, this is about maintaining control. Keeping leadership male-centered ensures that power stays in the hand of men, preventing challenges to the traditional hierarchy. There's nothing like a progressive church that puts women on the women's committee to decorate, cook, and occasionally read announcements. But heaven forbid they speak from the platform with actual authority. Equal rights? More like equal potluck contributions. Number 6.
Okay.
The church.
Okay. So, leadership is a boys' club. Yeah, really interesting. One of the things I think about is how we're always getting this sort of caricature to me of the super liberal progressive Jesus, but in actuality, the weight of Christian effort has been such that they're usually the ones we're striving against for equity, equality, human rights, progress, whatever it is. And I don't see how there could even be a better example than the rights of women and their role in the church. It is astonishing that they pretend that Jesus was so wise, yet for some reason, you had to fight against the religious instinct to get people to actually give women the right to vote and own credit cards and decide what to do with their bodies. And we still have a largely Christian, evangelical, fascist right-wing movement that is just successfully repealed that right. And it's not even like, to me, this isn't even politics. This is just a factual observation of what has happened in this country. I don't even understand. There's nothing even speculative about this. So that's incredible. And then to this day, right now, if a woman had the audacity to consider herself a priest in the foundational Catholic Church and say the mass, she'd be excommunicated. Don't believe me? Look up what happened to the organization of female priests. So to this day, they will not let women say the mass and be priests. Like so what? And this is such the case of most religious organizations, not even just Christian, Jewish, Muslim, like they're all like this. They're all the bedrock solid foundation of patriarchy and misogyny. It's so crazy that we deal with these issues every single day, and they have such profound consequences for real people's lives, yet we refuse to just sincerely name the source of these problems and name the people who are doing this. It's crazy. It's the same thing with all this Trump nonsense. When evangelicals vote for this fool, like over 80, 75, 80% of y'all, like it's we gotta stop pretending it's a coincidence. And the 25% of y'all that apparently saw this coming, y'all take care of this, because this is what they wanted. This is what they voted for. This is exactly what he said he was going to do. And now y'all want to play stupid. What does that say?
It says, I've made this morning. Disclaimer: wearing this hat too tightly may cause reduced circulation of blood to the brain, causing injury.
Oh my goodness.
So everybody else has got a tighter hat, but her hat's big. But anyway, it is a funny thing.
Hey, Randy.
That people see Trump as a Christian. But what does that say about what they think it takes to make a Christian? Again, I've said it before. It's like having the jersey and never played the game. It's like putting a sticker on your car, on your bicycle, or whatever. It doesn't mean you are what you say you are. It gives some people that impression, people who don't dig deep, right? Who don't have that opportunity. So it's pretty sad. One person pointed out so beautifully, better than I would have done, how that many farmers may not have realized just how tied to their livelihood these social programs for poor people are. Because poor people buy groceries. They have to feed themselves. And if they can't afford if they can't afford the same amount of groceries, that means the farmers sell less. The producers like Kellogg's and stuff will produce less. And if they produce less, they're raising the price so they can make similar money or lose less. And everybody in the chain loses. And yet, one after another, a lot of those guys voted for Trump. Again, they didn't know how the parts fit together. They just knew, here's a guy who's going to stand up for people like me. No, there's a guy that's going to step on people like you. They didn't see it. They just couldn't see it.
There's such a cruelty to all of this, and it's kind of where a little shift in my attitudes come from, because in some sense I feel like I'm advocating for believers. It's so weird because it's like every time I talk to them, they seem to get so threatened, and it's like, I don't know if you realize this, but we're trying to help you out. Like it's sad to watch people sign up for something that is ultimately going to hurt them and cost them so much, and having to watch it and not be able to do anything about it. And I give a certain amount of kudos to people who just kind of hang in there and somehow keep going. All right, let's let this roll.
More like equal potluck contributions.
All right,
Number
next
6,
one.
the church thrives on guilt and fear.
Absolutely.
Ever wonder why so many church messages focus on sin, judgment, and hell? It's because fear, guilt, and shame are powerful motivators. If people feel like they're constantly failing, they'll keep coming back for forgiveness and guidance. And if they fear punishment, whether in the form of hellfire or social rejection, which is also a form of social coercion, by the way, they'll comply with whatever the church tells them to do. This is why messages about love and grace are often paired with warnings about sin and damnation. Warnings about missing the mark. It keeps people emotionally dependent on the church, making them less likely to leave. It's like a soap opera plot device. Keep the audience hooked with a cycle of danger and rescue, sin and salvation, so that they never miss an episode. The only difference is, in church, you're both the guilty sinner and the audience. Number 5, most church...
All right, so yeah, where are you at with that one?
1,000%. Because if you didn't feel guilty, you wouldn't necessarily be there. I went to LA Church of Christ 1,000 years ago, Los Angeles Church of Christ. And when you went out on a date, they wanted you to go with another couple. So you're at least one other couple.
Really?
Yes, and it was accountability.
Wow.
So you didn't end up screwing.
And this is for adults too?
For adults.
Yeah, because y'all were like grown.
Yeah, I don't know what they did in the teen ministry. I
was probably
in the teen
worse.
ministry for a little bit.
Wow.
It never came up, like these guys going on dates. So I don't know. I don't know what they did, but it probably the same.
Wow.
But I hated this because I try to conduct myself in an honorable manner and be very respectful. But I would go out with women and not do the whole double date thing because I am a cheap ass. And you see what inevitably happened. I had a really good paying job. What inevitably happened is I ended up paying more than my fair share. The two women wouldn't pay anything. And the other guy always found a way to pay less. I'm like, no, math is my job. You owe more. You owe more money. So I got sick of it. I'm like, I'd rather just pay my own way. And I'll pay my dates way too.
Yeah,
I ask her out.
Plus, it's not a that's not a healthy way to get to know somebody, you know. And it's such a high control thing. Like it's a thing to me that yes, it's a thing to me that if it wasn't for what ultimately turns out to be to me a license to be toxic and abusive that you get when you're wrapped in the brand of faith, that's a crazy cult tactic right there. Well, like just imagine out any other context, a group doing that to you, right? That's crazy.
Well, one of the benefits of that sort of thing from the organization standpoint is some people will feel that they're being looked after because of the level of control. Excuse me. Think of a personal trainer walking you from one machine to the next. Do this many reps. Do this machine for this, stay on this Stairmaster for 17 minutes and then go do this. They're telling you what to do. And so you don't have to think. And when you don't have to think, you are what? Relaxing. So there's a comfort that comes along with that level of control. In my opinion, it's one of the reasons that I've lived in former communist countries. And I think it's one of the reasons why some of the older people that were in their 70s and 80s were so comfortable with communism. There's a whole bunch of stuff they just never had to put a lot of thought into. The state takes care of it. The government takes care of it. The government takes care of it. And they never had to figure these things out for themselves. So they had a level of comfort that the younger generation is like, we have to do that now. Ridiculous. So I think that's what happens within those cultish organizations like that, to where there's all this control. Well, if there wasn't all that control over your life, are they really interested in you?
That's
Michael.
a crazy story, Michael.
Yeah, I was gonna say Michael Beverly has a relevant.
Michael, that's crazy. I mean, it happens, but it's crazy. It's crazy that it happened to you. Yeah, hey, man. That's another reason I don't want to. That's another reason I don't want to be doing that. Nah, I think it's cool if you want to go hang out with another couple or whatever. I mean, that's all good. I think it's weird for an organization to tell you have to do it. That's that's crazy. But yeah, go ahead.
Oh, I want to highlight Bethany's comment. This push and pull of causing guilt, so people feel like they need forgiveness, mirrors cycles of abuse.
It is, to me. It is now, that is. Yeah.
Now there's more power in what Bethany has stated than is on the surface, because what we find in abused people is some of them will come to need the abuse. They think that's normal. After a while, correct. They can't function without it, and correct. They act out when they don't have it. I've told the story on Hot Program before, when I was looking into adopting a child, that we were told by there was a room full of us that wanted to adopt or were interested in learning more, that you might get a foster kid, and the foster kid comes to your home. You have stability. There's food on the table at certain times every day. They get a bicycle. They can go play. They have friends. They have suddenly, your nieces and nephews are coming over to play with them. There's all this normalcy. You're not on drugs. You're not drunk. You're not passing out. You're not smacking them around. And some kids can't take it because your normal is not normal for them. They don't feel safe in an environment that you're clearly working hard to make safe for them, because it's foreign. It's not how the world works. It's like it's a trick being played on them, and they're waiting for the abuse to come back. They can't easily adapt to sanity.
Yeah.
So I think that's a really powerful comment, Ben.
And I think that's part of the issue to me. So I think that one of the problems is, so you think about it philosophically, is I think people will call it like the sort of God of the gaps, right? But to me, it's more than that. It's that there's just so many things that had a religious or supernatural origin to them, right? And now we have a total different understanding of them. And it's obvious if we talk about something like evolution versus creationism, right? Or the origin of languages. There's sort of like obvious examples, but there's a little bit less pernicious ones, like a lot of gender essentialism results from the sort of he created them male and female or whatever. But what I don't think people are as conscious of is we've done the same thing with morality. And according to our just sort of what I consider modern sensibilities, there's just certain things that we just don't go with anymore. Like it's not okay to just tell people they're broken. If you set religion aside, we just like don't think it's really cool. We think life's hard enough. Telling people they're all sorts of broken just for being who they are, regardless of what their situation is really just not something we find to be a healthy way to treat things. We really do tend to say people are equal, so we try not to make hierarchies and think certain groups are better than other groups. And so there's just so many things that I think when you just sort of, and I think PC says this, that like, oh, I know you're in this religion or whatever because you're trying to be good and you think this is how you are a good person, but there's a way in which they've just assumed that all of this is a really moral way to do it. Like at the end of the day, there's a really good values embedded, in the story. And I think for most of us, even on face value now, the story is just a bit off-putting. Yeah. Yeah, I don't know. All right, here we go. Thanks for dropping that link, PC.
The guilty sinner and the audience.
All right, here we go. 5.
Most church growth is just people switching churches.
I never
Churches
knew that.
love to brag about growth,
I
but
never
here's the
knew
truth.
that.
Most new members aren't actually new believers. I've been sounding this alarm for a little while now.
Wow.
They're just Christians moving from one church to another church.
Wow.
And most times they're not even good Christians. But pastors measure success by attendance. But what they don't tell you is that many churches actively recruit from other congregations rather than bringing in people who weren't already believers. They rely on reshuffling the same pool of Christians rather than converting new members. Churches with the best music, entertainment, and social programs tend to win the battle for members. But in reality, very few churches are actually growing the Christian faith. Most are just competing for the same market. They might as well hand out transfer forms at the door, Please tell me about your 7 most recent churches.
That is
That's
a good
powerful
one
right there. That needs to be a YouTube short. If anything does, it's that.
Yeah.
I might have to do one of those stupid videos where I'm doing this. Go ahead, Socket.
No, I was just gonna say they don't. No, I was gonna say that it's something that I've been aware of for a while, that like it's you really don't see a lot of genuine conversions, but you do see a lot of like people looking for a new church home, and it's very sad that I think, again, growing up in a family deeply involved in ministry, it's kind of an open secret that you got to have the best preaching, and you got to have the best choir, and you got to have the best band, and you got to have the best food, and and a certain degree of pride that comes with enjoying those aspects of your congregation. But it does ultimately sour some things. And I was thinking about even like the charity work that they do, because we had mentioned that earlier. When you realize it's part of the sales pitch, you look at it a bit differently.
No, that's my comment on. You heard my comment on that. I think that
Yeah.
that's freaking gold, because I had never considered it that way. And we hear the term, or I used to hear the term, I don't hear it so much anymore, baby Christian, someone that was a new Christian. And it was a rare thing when I was in LA Church of Christ to see a baby Christian that was new to the faith. When I showed up and got asked to church by my friend Sam, I'd already believed in God. I already thought Jesus was real. I went to church as a little kid, right?
Right.
I couldn't consider myself brand new. Now, I had never studied the Bible before, so that part was new, but still, it wasn't new information to me. Entirely new, anyway. So I find that is, I'm so happy to have heard that statement, and I will definitely remember and quote Durante, or paraphrase Durante in the future, because I think that's an important distinction that some people leave out. One guy during my stint as a churchman in the LA Church of Christ, one guy heard me we were at like IHOP, and we were praying and talking about the Bible and stuff. And he overheard us, and he introduced himself, and ultimately he started coming and he got baptized. And it was just the one guy, though. It wasn't 35 guys. It wasn't 206 guys and gals. It wasn't that. It was just one person. And it was very meaningful to him.
Yeah.
Which is great.
I'll give you another one while we're on this. Most people who say they're new to the faith aren't actually new to the faith. It's like the one story I almost never believe when I hear it on YouTube or social media is the "I used to be an atheist" thing, right?
It's as believable as the atheist on a plane. I sat next to the atheist on a plane. I sit next to people when I fly on planes. They never really talk about religion.
And almost invariably, these people grew up in a church or some religious affiliated family, maybe deep, maybe not so deep, but they were Christian adjacent or affiliated, and have interpreted their not going to church regularly or not actively being Jesus-y or whatever as "I used to be an atheist." And it is just to me, it's like, not really. And I think that's the thing too. A lot of people who they celebrate as converts or new are actually more like backslidden, or were in were what we would call another denomination, right? Practicing another tradition. They were Catholic, then they fell off for a little bit. Now their evangelical friend got them. And they're new to it because this is the true Christianity, or they're actually going to have a relationship now or whatever. So yeah, there is a lot to, there's not a lot of, it's like, even if you go one level deeper, the numbers aren't really how they're portrayed, for sure. Yeah.
Number 4, worship music is designed to manipulate you. The emotion
go ahead. I'm gonna get it.
The genetically modified skeptic did the genetically modified skeptic did a great video that touched on this, where he talked about church priming and stuff like that. And I don't know if you've seen it, ladies and gentlemen, for yourself. Certainly not everyone watching has always or was ever a believer in God's, but man, the music, they can really get you. One trans-denominational church I went to, that's what they call themselves, trans-denomination. So everybody was welcome. They didn't care what you believed. You could be a Buddhist, you could be a Christian, you could be a Sikh. Just come on in, y'all. We're worshiping together. They would have the choir maybe twice a month, because they noticed that people kept coming for the choir and not the message, which I found amazing.
I have so many thoughts on this.
That's like scraping the icing off the cake and eating only the icing, which I have done. Go ahead, Pocket Locker.
I'm gonna let him go.
Repetitive
I'm gonna let him
lyrics,
go.
rising melodies, and atmospheric lighting to create an
Oh my
altered state of
goodness.
mind, making attendees more emotionally receptive to the messaging. Now, this is a form of manipulation designed to make you feel connected to God when it's really just a psychological response to sound, rhythm, and community. Studies have shown that the same emotional responses occur at secular concerts and political rallies. It's not divine intervention. It's human psychology at work. And sure, we called it the Holy Spirit, but if you swapped out the lyrics for R&B love songs, you'd see the same tears, same goosebumps. The difference? No altar call at a Beyonce concert, contrary to popular Christian conspiracy. 3.
All right. So that was crazy. I have so many thoughts because I spent so much time as a worship musician. One, it's kind of annoying because the person who is picking the music is deliberately putting in the emotional highs and lows to the point that it even annoys you as the band, because there's really because again, there's no need to play this sad hymnal. There's no need to play this really like depressing, slow, like grindy song. Like it's really weird, but it fits into the fact that, I hate to say it, but there's a lot of cruelty built into it, right? And so a lot of it is, I want you, and I want to take you on the emotional ride, but I don't want to deliver just straight good vibes dopamine. I want you to be, like you said, primed for the guilt, the shame, the look at what Jesus had to do for you, the brokenness I want you to feel in relation to your sin, right? And so, and I also need you to get into such a great emotional state that you're going to ignore all the blood, right? And so it gets kind of like, the band is like the audience. Like we kind of want to play the popular feel good songs that we rock with in the gym or in the car on the way to work or whatever. And we know what those songs are, but they're also going to make us play songs that sound deliberately painful. And part of it, you realize is, I hate to say this, but it's what the audience demands. As much as the audience loves to feel good, especially in a religious context, the audience loves to feel bad. It's what I've talked about when I say, like, they'll come up to pastors even, and they'll be like, pastor gave a good sermon, a feel-good sermon. Let's imagine it's Easter, Christmas, whatever. He's going to try to, it's all going to be beautiful, greatest story ever. Jesus was your homie. And people are going to be like, oh, pastor, today's message was great. Always really love your preaching. Have a good day, right? But if it's one of those, you're so broken, you have no idea how much Jesus had, and then they nailed him down. They were just nailing him. Do you know what it's like to have a nail just driven through you with a sledge, just nailing him and nailing him and nailing him, and the blood is squirting everywhere, and he's being tortured, and it was all for you, right? That's when they go, oh my God, pastor, today's sermon convicted me. Oh,
Yeah.
it made me realize that I have fallen so far, even in my own walk, and I need to recommit, dedicate everything to Christ. And I can't thank you enough for the conviction, right? Like, they really love to feel bad.
I saw a lot of that, people coming up to the ministers and telling them how, and I've even done it, how effective this or that message was, or the choir. I did this all the time with the choir director at that trans-denominational church, because she was just amazing, and the choir was amazing, and you could attend a practice of the choir without having to join. It was really interesting. But yes, there's a lot of that where we feel special because they listen. We feel special because the message was directed at us. And that made us feel that somebody up there was looking after us. Somebody up there was meeting our needs. Well, it might have been that the minister or somebody in ministry was in the bathroom at the same time you were, and they overheard you. And they just worked that into the message, figuring, well, if it applies to that guy as he's complaining to the other guy who asked him how he's doing, there must be 20, 30 people out here in the audience who can relate. So allow me to touch them spiritually with what I have to say today. And as far as the nail, you know, they drove the nails, and the modern me would say, well, I've stepped on nails before, and it is excruciating.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah, it's not fun.
I have to admit, I have waited for someone to come up to me, current atheist me, and try to get me to do a Bible study with them. I would go in a heartbeat. I don't care what else my wife had planned. It could be the baby's birthday. I'm sorry, y'all. I'm going to Bible study. And I'm sure my wife would say, I noticed you have 3 Bibles with you. I'm like, yeah, we're getting this done today. So, but I would go just to show them, like, this isn't what you guys think it is. It's not. Read the whole thing, you know.
So for me, part of this is, and it's also part of how you, I think, subconsciously or not rationalize it, is it is a performance and it is a show.
Yes.
And it is, you know, you use the euphemism service, and you kind of want to be on message, especially like if the pastor's delivering a series or something like that. You don't really want there to be too much of a mismatch between the mood, and it's great if you have lyrics that are on theme to, you know, so some of that is just production, if you will. And believe it or not, again, people got to remember this, it is a competition. I used to say that, you know, there's a reason churches are really grateful to have a good drummer. It's because churches are really grateful to have a good drummer. It just makes service so much more, you know, enjoyable than the alternative. And there's just no substitute for certain things. And so, you know, it is a competition, and the church that the message and the music all kind of work in synergy. And it is that you want people to start up. Normally it's so, is it because normally you're doing like 5 or 6 numbers. Normally there's standard canon. What I mean by that is, if you could play at one modern evangelical Christian church, you could play at all of them because they all play the same arrangements of the same songs. But you start up very high energy. You want people to feel welcome, maybe dancing, clapping, singing, shouting. Song number 2 sometimes has a dip in energy, but not necessarily. Once in a while, that's also a time where you'll play like your kind of like your maybe your best song or like a feature song. It's often good to do song number 2. Song number 3 is usually that's when you're actually setting up for the sermon. So usually that's bringing it down because you're getting ready for the pastor. So you're going to get into the series. Not always necessarily mean it's slow, but whatever. But a lot of times it is, or that's where you're going to do a hymn or more traditional song. Then pastor preaches. And then after that, if he starts out, if the sermon is a real serious, dark one, then your 4th song is probably going to be like a ballad or like a slow song that like kind of captures the mood that the sermon was in. If he leaves you on a high note, then song number 4 is going to be like a little bit more high energy, kind of back to like a up tempo. And then song number 5 is always something to send the people home happy. So it's usually something popular, up tempo. Everybody knows it. Everybody sings along, and everybody goes home feeling good. Wash, rinse, repeat. We'll see you next week. But that's just, and there's different variations of that, right? If you, for instance, if you're in like a black church, a lot of times you're gonna like the choir is gonna march in at a certain point, so that's a whole number in and of itself, and they're gonna go one of their numbers, and then they may have 2 or 3 dedicated numbers during the service too. But you know, this is going to be variations on that. But my point is, whatever the church figures out is going to be rather formulaic from week to week, and even church to church. And you know, there's good reasons for that. Now, here's what's interesting. there is a lot of tension. So there are churches and ministries where the pastor is very like the word heavy, and people rock with that. Like some people think of it, they kind of think of it as distasteful to be at a church primarily to enjoy the band and the music and the worship service. It's like part of their Christian stripes, part of what makes them real Christians and sincere ones and dedicated to their relationship with the Lord is that their church worships with an aesthetic that resist the temptation to get swept up in the charismatic and the gifts and the music and all of that. So there's no choir, there's not a band, there are no drums in this allowed in this neighborhood. Forget the church.
You gotta turn your stereo off as you approach.
There's no drums allowed in 1,200 feet of the premises. There's literally, there might just be a dry pipe organ if they're in a building like that, but for the most part it's either just a piano, just one keyboard, or just one dude playing guitar, right? Maybe once in a while a little help, somebody could play the violin or whatever, or a lot of times there's just no instruments. There's churches that really get down like that. And so now when you move up to the spectrum of full band worship teams all the way through, there's damn near an orchestra and a huge choir and 4 guitars and all that type of stuff. Believe it or not, there really does become a competition. Because I could tell you, for instance, a lot of pastors, they be all right, but they ain't all that. If you're a musician and you've played at a lot of churches, you've seen a lot of pastors, and even within certain churches, you know who could really preach and who's just like you one of the fill-ins, you the B team or C team. I'm A team. I know I'm A team. So people here to see me. I don't know about you. So, but it's silly because it's like it's this silly game you're playing because the pastor wants to be the pastor of the church with the best worship team. That's why they have it set up like that's why they get down like this, right? They want to have a good band. They want to have great worship leaders. But then at the same time, they play these games to literally like have this pettiness between the focus on the worship team and the focus on the pastor. And it feels weird, especially if you try to, because like me, like I think, playing music, obviously there's a lot of ego and personality involved, but I think to be a good functional musician and part of a good band is like you put that aside, you're just here to do what's asked of you, and you're here to be a positive contribution to what we have going on. So you literally feel like I have the pastor's back. I'm literally on the drums behind you. And it's so weird when they like call out the band, be like, yeah, well, don't get too swept up in the band and stuff like that. Or don't be coming here and thinking, I know Jay's rocking out on drums, but that's not really what we're here for. Like, bro, what did I do to you today? Like, why, what put me on your mind this morning? So there is a weird tension. It almost feels like jealousy involved, especially because a lot of times, for instance, you might have a worship leader who really wants to be a pastor. And even though he's the worship leader, he low-key really trying to prove to everybody he could preach. Right. So he be really trying to get the people going with his little mini sermons and stuff that he be throwing between songs. And then maybe they do let him preach once every other month or a few times a year, and then people get all really excited when he's preaching. So there's now a little bit of tension between the pastor and the worship leader already. You see what I'm saying? And then maybe the worship leader start bringing in some real guns and like stepping up the band a little bit. So now the pastor really looking at him like, what you trying to do? I'm telling you, the pettiness, y'all. The pettiness, y'all. It's like a soap opera. It's kind of interesting just to be a witness to the human drama is kind of compelling, I guess.
I have a question about this pocket.
Go ahead.
In your experience, do different personality types key in on different instruments? For instance, certain types love the guitar. They're focusing on what the guitarist is doing. Others, the drummer. Others, the pianist or an organ player? What do you think?
I'll say you rarely have to guess what instrument people play, and that's no
not what they
shade.
play, like the audience. When you're out there playing to the
Oh,
audience,
and yes,
are there people who
yes,
certain
yes,
personality
yes,
types that
yeah,
focus
yeah,
on
yeah,
this or that
yeah,
instrument?
because you know who is watching the drummer the whole show and who never looks at anything else. You also know who reacts to everything you do, and then certainly the people that come up to you and want to meet you and talk to you after but yeah, you get a feel. And it's that way for the audience, but it's also that way for the church overall. Like there's churches I'm really playing, but they don't care. And a lot of that is they're just not wired like that. Like they have such a super strong music ministry that it's like whatever, they're strong on every instrument like that, so it doesn't matter. And or if it's in Jersey or New York, like the great drummers are a dime a dozen, and they have 4 other fantastic drummers on their roster. They really don't care. But then there's churches, you're worth your weight in gold because you absolutely change the whole feel and dynamic of their services, and you're their ace drummer for everything they do. So and so there's churches like that. They let you know that like you're incredibly valued there. Yeah. Yeah. That's one of the things that I hate to say it is like a trade-off with the money. A lot of times you will let a church get away with paying you less or not paying you or whatever if they make you feel really, really great about playing there. It's just I guess egos and personality. Flattery does get you a long way.
We might have to interview Christopher Tablante one day because he's got a unique Philippines perspective. As I'm reading some of the comments, like, oh, that's interesting. So we'll see. Maybe
Yeah. I'm always down for that. Yeah, shoot us. You can email me at pocketlocker86@gmail. Actually, that's probably the easiest way.
No altar call at a Beyonce concert, contrary to popular Christian conspiracy. 3, your pastor has more power over you than you think. Many pastors go beyond spiritual guidance and seek to control your personal decisions, from who you vote for, to who you love, to how you parent. This isn't just advice, it's social pressure disguised as doctrine. Some churches even shun members who step out of line, using ostracization as a means of control. If you challenge the pastor's authority or question a doctrine, you may find yourself quietly pushed out or publicly shamed. It's not just faith, it's a power structure designed to maintain order and compliance. I once tried to post a very neutral comment on a controversial topic, and next thing I knew, I was hauled into several spiritual concern meetings with church leaders. They were more upset about my differing opinion than they would have been if I had robbed a bank. That speaks volumes.
All right, so this is something I feel like is very pernicious that goes on. It's just the idea of the man of God. Once somebody has, and I've benefited from it a little bit, and can speak to it like I spoke a little bit earlier. There's definitely a status and privilege that comes along with it, and part of that is authority in other people's lives, because once they've convinced themselves or committed themselves to the notion that somebody has spiritual authority, they feel like it is incumbent upon them to submit or be in compliance with that authority. And it gives pastors dominion in I guess, sorry to be repetitive, but authority in areas where they have no expertise or qualifications. But are you really going to listen to what your therapist is telling you or what your pastor is telling you? Unfortunately, a lot of believers are going to go with the pastor.
No, I don't have anything to add because I was not at that pastoral level. And I didn't see a lot of that. Hey, ask that person to leave or put that pressure on them. I didn't really see a lot of that.
But did you ever see like just people? Because one thing I do feel like happens, and I'm not trying to pick on Black folk, but any sort of marginalized group where I think there's a lack of education about professional help and a lack of resources to access professional help, I think you do see pastors standing in, sometimes effectively for
Yeah,
counselors or
that's true.
whatever, whether that's personal instead of therapy or marriage counseling or whatever like that. But in a lot of our communities, it really does go all the way up to even political power, where often being a popular pastor is reason enough for somebody to be either sort of on boards or committees or commissions where they have quite a lot of influence on policy or
We have that
politicians,
now.
or just outright
Mhm.
running for office. And like even like Raphael Warnock, it's
Raphael
like he
Warnock, Paula
people,
White
yeah,
has a lot of influence
he's a
on the
great
president.
pastor, and let's make him a senator. And by the way, he's a person who largely I approve of most of what he does as a senator, and I send him money even though he's a Christian, because again, we are aligned on the particulars and the matters. So,
Yeah.
we could set that difference aside, but it's just an observation that, um, that authority of pastors carries a lot of weight and influence with it. Yeah.
Number 2, Christianity survives because of indoctrination. Most believers didn't choose Christianity, they were born into it. Churches know that if kids aren't indoctrinated early, they're far less likely to adopt religious belief later in life. This is why many churches are very glad to support other fantasy and fairy tale characters because they know it all works together for their good. That's why youth ministries exist, not to teach kids how to think, but to go ahead and tell them what to think. From a young age, children are conditioned to accept religious teachings as fact, discouraging critical thinking about their faith. Without this early reinforcement, Christianity would struggle to sustain itself. Some of my earliest memories are coloring pictures of out of the Bible, such as Noah's Ark, but never quite allowed to ask, so wait, God drowned everybody else? That's kind of extreme, isn't it? They just gave me more crayons and told me to thank God for his mercy. Isn't it beautiful how they love to have us painting as children acts of, well, that.
Genocide.
All right.
Yeah.
And before we
Seriously.
get to number 1, if you like what I do and want to show your support, click the like button, subscribe to the channel, hit the alert notification bell, and if you can, please share this to your social media.
And yeah, gang, we've got a link in the description. Definitely subscribe to Durante Lamar. Send him a like and a sub and a comment. Do all that good stuff. So I believe this to be true about most religions. So don't want to just pick on Christians, but again, I think most of this stuff is like thoroughly a modern, clearly magical thinking, and again, I think if you develop your intellectual self defenses before being introduced to this stuff, it'd probably be hard to convince people of it. But unfortunately, I also think that it is. It's become tantamount to an acceptable form of lying to and scaring the children. And I think we have so much sensitivity around religion that we really do allow people to get away with bad behavior. And while I would love some sort of effort to defend the intellectual development of young people from a policy perspective, what I'm usually more interested is the far more easy and I believe effective social pressure, to where it would just be considered distasteful, but we're in a place where if you told people, hey, I have no problem with your faith, I just think you should let your children stay home on Sundays till they turn 18 and can make up their own mind about whether or not they want to go. I think people just look at you like you're crazy. People believe that parents have the right to teach their children their faith. But I just think it's so it's a battle I don't particularly find myself waging, because I don't see it as winnable. But I think from a perspective of education and from a perspective of mental health, these are not good narratives to tell children.
I agree. What it establishes, it seems to me, is that God is this dominant, mighty force that can even affect you. If he could do it to them, he could do it to you. I think that's what goes in the brain of the child. If God could do that to them, God could do it to me. And you're not insignificant anymore on the world stage. You're now a potential victim. So watch your butt.
Yeah.
It becomes that in the mind. I really think so. It becomes that in the mind of a kid. If I don't behave myself, God's gonna kill me.
Yeah, and I also think it's a real problematic thing for the mental health of young people, and it's also it becomes an obstacle to educating people. That's something I've definitely observed, and you feel like that's unfortunate, where there are certain things where students feel like, I can't think about this, or I can't even go there, and you're like, wow, that's unfortunate. You're a young person, you don't deserve that. All right, let's hear number one. We've made it.
That's how we can continue to make a difference. Now, on with number
there
one.
You
on
go,
our
Robin.
list. The church needs you more than you need it. Without your money, attendance, and loyalty, the church ceases to exist. It tells you that you need it for morality, purpose, and salvation. The truth is, the church is dependent on you, not the other way around. And once you realize that, you're free. At the end of the day, church isn't about truth. It's about control. Pastors won't admit that because their entire livelihood depends on people staying in the system. But you don't have to. You can think for yourself. You can walk away. And when you do, you'll realize you never needed the church to begin with. The minute you say, actually, I'm good without Sunday morning guilt trips and enforced tithes, is the minute you discover a whole world of authenticity, autonomy, and agency. It's like discovering you had wings for the whole time, but they were folded under a pew. Christians, have you ever wondered why so many pastors end up becoming atheists? Click here to watch my Bible study with the next pastor series. And if you're interested in the most recent video I did about the 10 lies I told as a pastor, you can click down here to watch that video.
Yeah, that was a fantastic video. Yeah, that was really good. Durante Lamar, and I do think all of those secrets are devastating to that effort of the church, but somehow I feel like not for most believers. I really do think, like, I've even gotten to a point with myself where when we talked earlier about, yes, to say you believe something is to, in a sense, declare what you think to be true, but somehow with most believers, there's something else going on, and it's about more than that. It's got to a point where it's like, I felt like I'm not taking care of myself when I engage in these type of conversations, because it's like, yo, you're forgetting that this person ultimately is not about whether or not it's really true or factual in that sense for them. So in a sense, you're wasting your time pointing these issues out, and if they're not interested or have some commitment to the proposition that they might be wrong about this. And so, but people do take it as far as to say, I hope that if it were proven to me to not be true, I would find a way to believe it anyway. I further think that there's something even more effective that a lot of people believe, and it's something that I believe some sincere believers in my life have basically told me, which is, I'm not really interested in reevaluating this. I've learned this. I believe this. This is what I know. And so I'm not interested in learning again or examining it or whatever. Like it's an apathy to it's just like not interested. You know, it's just like and it's just like, oh, okay. And you know, I think just not interested is something a lot of people can get themselves to. I'm just not interested in examining this, even easier than they can get to if somebody proved it to be false. I'd want to believe it anyway. I think that's a harder pill to swallow, but you don't have to swallow that hard pill, because you'll get to, I'm just not interested in looking into whether or not Christianity is true.
Yeah.
Right. And then you're good. Yeah. Yeah.
What matters is that it matters to them. There's a comment from Ember. I think he doesn't make a big enough deal of this. The church isn't the pastor or the building, it's the people. I think reaching the people is the hard part, because it wouldn't matter who, let's say, who in that church watches this episode of Hot Program, right, or any other one where we discuss the validity of Christianity. It doesn't matter whose mind we change. We're not changing all of their minds.
Right.
You know, I am often reminded of the Grinch Who Stole Christmas, where after the Grinch does all this work to steal all these things from the people, he still didn't steal Christmas. They're gathering around and they're singing Bahu Dore, Bahu Dore, because the things he took from them aren't the real meaning. And I think a lot of times as we expose things in Christianity, it does not mean what we think it means to some believers. It's not about the truth of the claims. It's not. It's about that relationship that they believe is there, regardless of how many errors we point out. Now, you'll find some who realize, wait, it can't be true if there are errors. There are clear problems that these people are pointing out, and maybe they're worth the examination. But if the average person who's in the pew doesn't believe that, right? Maybe we who have actually read the material have misunderstood it, versus them who can't be convinced to crack a Bible open when they're in their house.
I think we have. I think a lot of people have made the inference that it's a textbook or a reference manual, when really it's a pamphlet. It's a sales pitch. And so I think a lot of believers have it right in to see it as, well, I already believe. I'm already on the team. I'm already on side. I'm already in the family. I don't need to read the sales manual. I'm you know, and I got that feeling, because if you really do sort of get into the ideology of the relationship with Jesus, and you know, the legacy of your Christian family, and a lot of things like that, you really do see it that way. Like, yes, there's the Bible, but there's also my relationship and experience of the living God, and you do get you can get swept up in church service or church building or churching or whatever, right? And all of that becomes the experience of faith, and you're not interested in the sales manual because that's for that's for missionaries and preachers and all of those people to figure out how to deal with. Yeah,
that's a good point. I don't need to read a technical manual. I'm just driving the car.
And yes, exactly. Yes. Well, yeah, exactly. And a lot of us, to be honest, don't read the manuals of the cars we drive, and at least until something bad happens.
Yeah. Or how do I figure this out? I can't figure out how to turn the thing off or the thing on. Yeah.
So the other, the other thing is it's just it's hard for people, I think, to examine. I think they just feel like they're not. If they were to run into these challenges, that's an issue of interpretation. And I think once they give themselves permission, which ultimately I think a lot of people do, well, I don't take this literally, I don't take that literally. Like you said, then they can fix they can fix it in their minds. And so you can see a way in which the Bible doesn't then become even that important, because ultimately, if you say, hey, the Bible clearly endorses slavery, and then I just say, well, my God doesn't, then it's now kind of on you that you're being a jerk and insisting that I have to worship the God as you present it from the Bible, rather than the God I know.
Yeah, I haven't read the Bible, so that's not my God.
That's
a valid.
It is crazy.
Look, you're presenting me with things I don't know about, so you can't be talking about the same guy I worship.
Right.
And again, I had Father Tom as his name. We were having, what was it, Thanksgiving dinner or Christmas dinner, and he said to me, and this guy, well, we're at a friend's house, and he paid us a visit, and he said to me, that's when I presented one of these Bible difficulties, that's not the God I worship.
Yeah.
I trust Father Tom. I've had dinner with him numerous times. I trust him with my life. I do. And when he said that, I like to challenge people. There was no need to challenge him. He essentially, in saying that, told me what I need to know. Because if that's not the God he worships, it's also not the God he preaches. He's up there trying to get people to have the best possible life given the resources they have. He's not trying to make them fearful. He's trying to bring them out of that fear. I respect that. I respect it hugely. But he's not blind to those problems. He simply is not focused on those problems. He's focused on the fluffy God, as I call him, the God that does all the right things and is wonderful and sweet and wants you to be just like him, as far as the wonderful and sweet part, and be kind to everybody, and don't chase that Mexican guy away with his fruit cart. If you're hungry, why don't you buy some of his fruit and give it to a homeless person if you're not hungry, that sort of thing.
What I just decided about the fluffy ones?
What's that?
They're the ones who don't want to go to jail for robbing the bank because they were just a getaway driver. No, so one of the things that used to help me with this, and I think is probably a thing, is I have a background in anthropology, and so I got used to thinking about things at the population level versus like a psychology or something where you're thinking about individuals. And so at some point to me, like I say things like, you know, a group is what a group does, you know, Christians are what Christians do. And it's incredibly difficult to deal with it at the level of that's not my God, because it's so individual. But it is sort of you know, what do you say, right? Because I don't think, you know, there's no commitments in that case outside of what a person wants, and it's fine. It's just, for me, when does the other stuff become a problem? You know, because I love the fluffy, nice stuff, but it feels like the majority of them are not doing that. So I wish we saw more of the fluffy ones helping bring the less fluffy ones around.
Well, I think a lot of the fluffy ones are on mission trips. They're really doing it, right? They're really living, or they're nuns, or they're monks. They're really invested. It's not, again, they're not wearing the jersey. It's not a casual label. They're really there because that's where their heart is. And you've heard me say it numerous times, like, I appreciate people like that because they're serious. They really mean it. Their faith is genuine. And the rest of the world, it matters in a way where they care for it, as opposed to focusing on it to be in the world. They're stepping away from society as participants and approaching it more as caretakers. Something went wrong. Try to reload. Okay. Are you still there, Pocket Locker?
Yeah,
Still
I'm
there?
here.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So the baby's here. She came to read Robin Webster's comments. Robin's always asking. So, but yeah, that's my take on it. Don't pull the cord. I know you want to. Don't pull the cord. Pocket Locker.
Yeah. I'm trying to make sure, timed out the wrong person. It's a lot of moderation activity happening right now.
I think pseudo history has.
Yeah, as long as we got rid of
activity.
pseudo, yeah, that's fine.
A lot of activity. Thank you.
Yeah. Thanks, gang. All right, y'all. That's gonna do it for us. You want to give us your closing thoughts, my one black friend?
It's okay not to go to church.
It's okay not to go to church.
And
wow.
I think if you're on a spiritual quest, 100% of that is within you, and you're trying to maybe see how you relate to the world and who you are in the world. And I really suggest taking a sheet of lined paper, or perhaps just typing it out, what you want to do with your life, and then come up with a plan where that's what you do. And you become that person that is doing what you want with your life. And you don't need to cause harm to others. Often we don't need to be millionaires or billionaires to get all the things on that list done. And you will find people along the way who are happy to assist you. Why? Because you're doing it. You step into their circle, and they step into yours, and you're going to be okay.
Yeah, and I'd say, it's okay to go to church, but also recognize that you're making a substantial investment and commitment to an organization, and it's natural to want to understand that organization and what's going on with it. I think about just being a fan of a sports team and how you always, therefore, you want to see what's going on behind the scenes, see them in the locker room, read interviews with the players, watch the documentaries, and ultimately you're interested when they make decisions, when they trade away your favorite player, or hire a new coach and things like that. you know, you might be interested in everything down to how difficult it is to become a cheerleader for the team. You know, there's whole shows about that. And so it's okay to be interested in the church that you're investing in and to want to understand what's going on. How does it operate? Where is my money going? Who are these people up on stage in front of me? How is all this put together? You know, that sort of basic curiosity is natural. And I think, you know, you should not feel bad about wanting to understand these things.
Right.
Yeah. But look, y'all, as always, it's been fantastic. Thank y'all so much for tuning in. I want to thank everybody in the chat. Thanks to the mods. Thanks to the new viewers and new commenters we had in chat. Appreciate y'all. Definitely subscribe to the channels. If you're not, there's the Hot Program channel, the Pocket Locker 86 channel, my One Black Friends channel. Also, like the video on your way out, and if you're watching later, definitely leave us a comment, and don't forget to subscribe to Durante Lamar's channel. You can also catch me on and Durante sometimes on Black Free Thinkers. That'll be tomorrow night on Skeptic Haven. And like I said, Durante's also been on Mythvision with Derek Lambert recently, and The Line as well. So definitely Durante's putting a lot out there. Go show him some support. All right.
And share our videos if you would,
Oh
please.
my goodness, share. Oh my goodness. There's a special place in heaven for the sharers. Just believe it and know it to be so. All right, gang, be good to yourselves.
And share.
And share.